What's happening, Blades? Tell me if you can hear me or not. Because it's saying I've got audio issues. That wouldn't be good, would it? Let's get this banner on. Like a banner. I don't think anybody's in yet. Can you hear me? Can you? 16 people in. Let me know if you can hear me, because it's saying mic's not working here. It's not great stuff. I'm not great with technology, am I? Let me know, guys, and then I'll get cracking. Spawn. Brilliant. Well, I don't know what StreamYard's doing then, because it was telling me earlier you couldn't hear me. So I was hoping to dive straight in tonight, be really professional instead of last time. But then it gave me some issues, didn't it? So how are we all? What's happening, Blades? It's a weird state of play at the minute. Really strange, because I was thinking about, well, I'm always up for talking Blades. I want to talk, I could talk to you about them all day long. But really, there's not much news at the moment, is there? There's loads going on. But in terms of updates and things like that, I know you'll all want an update. I ain't got much of one, if I'm honest. So to get that out of the way straight away, I have had some conversations today about the takeover from Dozie's side of things. It's still going on. He's still a huge player in the race, if you like. I don't know about any other parties, but for Dozie, it's still very live. He's keeping details of that close to his chest for obvious reasons. So first thing I'm going to put to you in the chat is going to be, what do you think about that? Because I've had mixed reviews, obviously, like I've talked about on my previous video. And thank you for everybody's kind comments. Really appreciate it. But what are your thoughts? Because I know there's a mixed bag, isn't there, really? And it doesn't have to be Dozie. But I'll tell you where it came to light for me, really. I've been preparing my videos for the different squads, if you like. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do the squad revamp? Well, if the rumoured amounts of around 30 million are true, and that's all we've got to spend in transfer fees, and the rest will be going on wages and balancing the squad out and making us competitive with sort of free transfers and loans, if you like. It's not a lot. It don't go very far at all. Any year that I've already tried to do a squad rebuild with them sort of figures. So what I'm going to have to do, or what it's no great shakes. It's just way I'm going to plan to do it, I think, unless all changes imminently, is I'll plan a squad rebuild on that budget. And then hopefully a little bit more of an optimistic one as well, but realistic one, like we've said. But looking at the £30 million figure and referring back to what Eki said about wanting to keep all the squad together, I can see where it comes from. It's a huge concern to me, this. But we're going to have to, because if you want Tommy Doyle permanently, which I think we've a really strong chance of getting, and it's been reported locally, well, that's going to be 10 million of your budget gone. So we've then got 20 million quid to replace, say you release Billy, Fleck, Ender, Jack O'Connell. How do you replace them? I know they haven't been sort of featured really, and we've got 2 left wing backs when Reece is fit. We've got 2 left centre halves, but I'm talking about re-signing Robinson, maybe even getting Clark on a 1-year deal. You're sort of wheeling and dealing at Premiership level, and we're on back foot to start with. The concern that comes with me is I think we will get taken over. I've had some conversations with Darren as well, who's quite confident that it'll happen in the next 3 to 4 weeks, which is great. But we are on the back foot. And does that concern you? Because it does concern me to a degree. I'm sure it concerns Eki. It also affects who he's going to be offering deals to. And one of the deals talked about, some that I think first circulated in Star, well, that McBurney's going to be offered a 5-year deal. Now, I'm a McBurney supporter. I like McBurney. I think a lot of his attributes I love in terms of how stuck in he gets, how much he cares. There's also other aspects to his game that turn a lot of people off. I think it reminds me in how he carries himself. Don't clip this, but he carries himself like Berbatov And when I say that, what I mean is he don't run. He looks like he walks everywhere. He's got a bit of a hunch. He's sort of milling about everywhere. But Berbatov could finish. Berbatov were absolutely top draw in terms of his skill set. McBurney looks like he's labouring a lot, and I don't know whether it's a prolonged element of his injury that he's had and his injury problems. But what we have to think about as a club now is worst case scenario. And if it's a £30 million budget and we are preparing for the worst in terms of relegation in 12 months' time, I think you secure your assets as best you can. And I'm not talking about Illiman and I'm not talking about Sander, because if we get relegated, they certainly won't be here. I don't think Illiman will be here this time next year, whatever happens. I think we've a small window of keeping Sander if we stay up. I'm talking about your players like John Egan, George Baldock, players that are going to be decent in the Premier League, but are very, very good Championship players. I think we give Egan and Baldock 4-year contracts. I think a lot of people sort of said, oh, 4 years, are you sure they're both 30? Well, they're both almost just 30, I think. But that secures them then. And even if at 32 we're relegated and somebody comes in for Egan, they've got to pay a decent fee for him anyway. And I think centre halves you get a bit more longevity out of. Baldock, I think we can move to right centre back eventually. There's all sorts of things like that. But McBurney on a 5-year deal, it secures the asset, doesn't it, if nothing else? Because I think he's an acquired taste, but somebody will take him for money. Whether it's Rangers coming in with 5 to 10 million, I think I'm talking about in a year's time, 2 years' time, but to protect the asset. I also think we offer Norwood a 2-year deal. That would be my shout, because is he 32? I don't know, to be honest. I'd have to double check that. But with Norwood, what you've got is you've got a backup player in the Premier League, which is all he can be, because he's top-end Championship, and we saw that wane this season as well. But also, if we do get relegated next season, then he's a good Championship player. There's no doubt about it. And to be a pivot player like he is, he doesn't expend a lot of energy every game. I think just becoming 34 in the Championship, he'll still be able to do a job, and it pads our squad out. So, you know, these are the sort of things we talk about. And what do you think about offering McBurney that sort of deal? I know it'll split a lot of opinion, like we've said. I know Andy the Blade won't be keen. Not a huge fan, if I'm honest. And then, obviously, the game at Huddersfield. What do we do? I mean, I don't know if you're the same. I mean, for me, living where I live in Wakey, I can't stand Leeds. Leeds is the team I don't like, other than Wednesday, obviously. So for me, I'm hoping Leeds and Forest go down. I'm hoping Wednesday don't go up. Huddersfield Town, I don't mind. Because they're such big rival, or they hate Leeds just as much as I do. I've got a lot of mates that are Town. We're going to the game on tomorrow night with them. So I don't mind them as a club, and I sort of do hope they do all right. But Warnock's really winding me up. He were there again other night. Sheffield have done all right. Sheffield are doing really well. He knows. You know, it reportedly said to Carrick, we've still got Sheffield to play, or Sheffield United to play. Don't worry, after they'd beat Borough. So like he'd do them a favour. He's never been a Blade. And as much as I think he's done a great job, he's a very good manager. He's winding me up, and it makes me want to think. It makes me think I want to beat him just for that, really. We'll go out to beat him anyway, but they have everything to play for. If they get a point against us, they're safe. If we beat them, and I'm sure most of you know this scenario anyway, but if we beat them, then it goes to the last game of the season for them and Reading. And it's Huddersfield against Reading at Huddersfield. And if Reading win, Reading stay up. If Huddersfield win or draw, Huddersfield stay up. But that's only the scenario if we beat them. If we beat them tomorrow night, that's what will play out on the Monday. If they get a point, they're safe. So I think Eki will probably go with not a similar team to what he put out last time, but I don't think he'll be blooding a lot of youngsters, which is a shame, a huge shame, because if any of you caught, not even the highlights, if you've just seen the result, but if you caught the highlights of the under-23s game the other day, yesterday it was, Asula hat-trick, Louis Marsh hat-trick. I tell you what, there is some talent coming through. They won under-23s championship again. I'd like to see Louis Marsh get a go. Obviously, Billy's the one we all want to start. We want Billy to start to get his 250. I think Bash will probably come in. I think Bash will come in because I don't know the status of Anel's baby, but it's an ideal time for a bit of paternity leave in it, I suppose. We've job done into it. He don't drink, so he's not missing out on any boozy celebrations, if you like. But I think spend time with his wife and new child would be, I think that's fair. And yeah, what do you think? What team would you put out? I would like to see a couple of youngsters, particularly to reward them for their performance in that under-23s. Not only that game, but that season that they've had, and just see what we've got, what sort of level they're at as we sort of assess the development for next year, and what level should we potentially look to loan them out at. So yeah, that's all I jumped on to say tonight, really, because as I say, there's not absolutely loads to go into at the moment. Obviously, there's a little bit that we've touched on there at Takeover, but I'll jump into some comments now and see who's got what to say. Oh, there's a fair few. Thanks for this. Good evening, Ben. Good evening, everybody. Interesting one tonight. Will we beat the record that Warnock's team set? Yeah, that's another thing, Andy, to be fair, because there are still targets for us to go for. Warnock's record, I think, is 90. Somebody will correct me because I've usually done a little bit of homework, but tonight I've just jumped on. I've been putting kids to bed and it's all come about quite quickly. It'll probably be 8 o'clock going forward, these sort of things. But Warnock's record is 90 points, I think. And we're at 88, aren't we, 2 to play? So Eki will want to get over that 90-point mark and become the highest point-scoring Sheffield United manager in Championship. One week, Scott. I saw this earlier, Scott, where you were pilfering for information from Darren. 1 week of 4 done for Dozy to get the deal done. Yeah, it's a 4-week self-imposed deadline, isn't it? I don't think it'll be a hard deadline by any means, but I think, if I'm honest, I think it's a clever play by the Prince. I think this whole thing has been a clever play by the Prince, and that's not a criticism of anybody. If I were a businessman, I think he's played his cards perfectly. He's seen the exclusivity expire, and I know people will have their opinions on this, and I'm happy to go into it if that's what you want to do. But the exclusivity's expired, and funnily enough, we're now a Premier League club, and it all came about around the same time. So we're now worth 150 rather than 115. Smart move. He's also knowing that Dozy is just about ready to go, just needs Premier League approval now, which won't be hard to prove at all. It can be done in a timely manner. So 4 weeks, let's get it done or it's not happening. Well, I think it will happen, but I think he's got Dozy over a barrel to a degree. I were surprised that Dozy was still interested, if I'm honest. Mike's working fine, Jimmy, but it's loud. Oh, could do with sitting back a bit. It's just, all right. I'll take that. Take your feedback on board, John D. Deal needs to be done within weeks, or it's not. Yeah, not until after the transfer window. I think even if it's done midway through transfer window, it's likely that targets will have been identified, budgets will have been identified, and if it changes, it'll probably then change in January, like you say. Realistic budget and then a Dozy budget. Yeah, maybe so. Evening, Rich, one of our ramblers, much appreciated, pal. 22 now. 22 ramblers. Thank you to everybody that's supporting the channel. City looking for 20 million plus for Doyle. I haven't seen that, Scott. It'll be 10 to 12, I think, is the figures I'd heard, with a buyback. Which always leaves you susceptible to losing a player if he does really well. But how's it worked out for Ian Brewster? I think Liverpool have got something like a £35 million buyback clause, and I don't think they'll be using it, if I'm honest. Aldi team? Sorry, mate, just a joke. We're all blades. I don't know. Aldi. Oh, of course, Pete, that was completely over my head, mate. Completely over my head. I saw everybody partying at Aldi. It sounded great. Sharp will stay till he's 45 because of financial situation. 5 years. Sarah, you must have caught me on a comment I was making at that time. Apologies. Just wondering if we can all get all our players to sign new contract deals and they don't want to spend the money which we really need to. Who would you like to see come in? Well, my ideal, Brent, is Cameron Archer. That's my number one target. And we talked about this in my recorded ramble earlier in the week. It's not going to happen with this transfer budget. I think a couple of things need to happen for us to sign him, which would be Borough to not go up because they'll be in driving seat because he's currently there, obviously. And that's usually the way, a bit like we've got with Tommy Doyle. And we'll need a new owner with a new budget to come in. The only other way I can see it is if we get him on loan, maybe a £2-3 million fee up front, and then an obligation to buy if we survive. But that's heavily weighted in our favour, so we'll see. But Cameron Archer would be my one. The other one I really like that I've been talking about for months is Mike Cooper, goalkeeper at Plymouth. 23. He's been their player at year for the last 2 years running. I think he's got an EFL team for the last 2 years running, but again, I'd have to check that. He's one that's gone completely under the radar, not only because at level he plays at, but more because at club, I think. Really good young keeper. And I think the smart way for us to play it would be Plymouth are not a cash-rich club. I would pay him £2 million and I'd loan him back to him for a season. And that as a long-term investment for us would be absolutely superb business. Because we're looking at getting a name goalkeeper out with an established number one. Well, it doesn't have to be this Mike. I think Mike Cooper would do the job, Michael Cooper. But I'm not convinced they'll chuck a 23-year-old into the sticks straight away from League One into the Prem. So those are my two that I'd like to get. And I think Mike Cooper's realistic with our current budget as well. McBurney on a 5-year deal, not a chance in hell. I can see it. That's the thing. I can see why they're offering it because he's a championship player, isn't he? Let's be right. And you know, some people will question that. Some people very close to me will question that. But it's like a safety signing, isn't it? We've invested a lot of money in him to get him. We certainly don't want to see him leave for nothing. I wouldn't have been surprised at a 3-year deal. I wouldn't have been surprised at a 4-year deal. But a 5-year deal takes him up to 31. So he'll spend the majority of time with us. There'll still be a bit of value in him, even if he does well. It's one of them, isn't it? I think we're just protecting our asset, to be honest, Steve. I'd like to see us at 90+ points. So I'd like to see a good side against Huddersfield if possible, Steve. Yeah, me too. Hat-trick in first half for Marsh. Yeah, I think it was, Sarah. We just have to roll the sleeves, blade style, and battle away in the Prem. Do you know what? I don't fancy us at all going in with this squad because, well, it's obvious we need to strengthen. And it's obvious, I think, where we need to strengthen. But one thing I will say for us, and it didn't quite work out against Man City in semi-final, but that were only down to a couple of mistakes on our part. Usually, in most cases, we're a very hard team to break down. I think we're in the game 99% of the time. I think there's only been a couple of times this season, and we've been affected a lot by injury as well. I think Borough turned up and embarrassed us, and Luton turned up and did us, really, that 1-0. Obviously, Rotherham were a poor game for us as well, but it's not often we're outworked, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it. And I think we'll give anybody a go next year, even with current squad, but obviously we need to strengthen. I think I've jumped up a little bit there. Comments are coming in all the time. Thank you for this. I'd like to see Marsh get last 10 minutes of a game before end of the season. So would I, Steve. I think he's earned that. Heard anything about the young Liverpool keeper coming in on loan? It were on a YouTube video. I haven't seen a YouTube video of it, but I have heard Kelleher he's on bench tonight, actually, I think. Don't know much about him at all, if I'm honest. It's somebody I'm going to have a look at because I've heard his name linked to us a couple of times, so we shall see. Has he been sanctioned by EFL? This is Dean. I assume you mean Dozy. There's no... it's radio silence from EFL, but there's no necessity for EFL to be involved anymore because it's going to be Premier League. So although we're not officially a Premier League club yet, you can sort of go past that red tape a little bit because everybody knows that's where we're going to be next season, obviously. So he only has to provide a sustainability model for the next 3 years, which with parachute payments you can do. And that was a stumbling block with the EFL. I'm sure some of the players are trying for certain bonuses in their contracts. I think, Macca said something, Stuart McCall said something really interesting. He said some of them might have a clean sheet bonus. Now, he might just be sort of, trying to encourage them or trying to let us know that we've still got something to play for. But it's interesting, they might have little stuff like that in their contract. Is Premier League less strict for ownership test? It's exactly the same test, Rich, but it's much easier to pass because of the finances. So, obviously, like I've just touched on, he'll no longer have to prove that he can sustain with his own money the club. Because in the EFL, you have to look at worst case scenario every time. So you're looking at sustaining us with our current wage budget if we hadn't gone up in the Championship, then in League One after relegation, and then potentially falling through to League Two. You have to demonstrate that in League Two you can sustain us, which is obviously a lot of money. They were talking around 200 million. That's where that figure came from. They wanted it in liquid cash, which I have on very strong authority. People have disputed that, but I can only tell you what I've heard. But in the Premier League, obviously, you get the parachute payments, which protects you as a club. So that's no longer an issue. Evening, Jimmy and the Ramblers from the Latte Master. Evening, pal. Any chance in hell Jack O'Connell stays a United player? A very small window, a very, very small window. And I'd like nothing more. I called for him to be on bench at the last home game against Preston. Somebody, I think, said that we're outside registration window. I know we'd left a place for him in case we could get him back fit. But I've read an article in Star tonight that Ecky's praising how much he's contributed behind the scenes and sort of motivated the lads and been leading on a lot of gym work for them because he looks ripped himself. If any of you follow him on Instagram, he's really stacked and sort of does a lot of work. But it also says, it speculates that he's set to leave the club in the summer, or it's extremely likely that he'll leave the club in the summer and he'll soon be announcing his retirement, which is such a shame. And I hope he can defy the odds, but 2 years, what sort of player would he come back as anyway? I mean, I've sort of said we should offer him a contract that, I mean, we've been looking for a defensive coach for God knows how long. Who better, particularly with our system, who better than Jack O'Connell to be the third man we've got? I know Ecky were a defender, but he focuses on the overall picture, doesn't he? We've got Super Jackie Lester with strikers. We've got Macca, who's midfield maestro, and then Jack O'Connell to organise defence. I think it's an absolutely beautiful combination. And then you sort of give yourself a window in a contract if you can do this, that if there is a chance he can come back, we get first refusal on him. So I would love to see Jack stay at the club in some sort of capacity. I think it's probably more likely to be some sort of ambassadorial role if he does retire. But it's such a sad tale, such a sad tale. Good evening, Ramblers from Bulgaria. 3-0 win tomorrow night from Pixie's channel. Oh, that's optimistic, innit? But doable. Where we played against Preston, I thought, spot on. Who expected that sort of performance? I thought they'd all still be half cut, to be fair. I love that chant as well. I won't repeat it on channel, but there were a chant that were joking about that. Would you go for MGW back? I don't think we'd be in the conversation now, to be honest, Dean. I think Gibbs White I think he's had an okay. Well, it's been an up and down season, hasn't it? Some games he's looked really good, and some games he's gone missing. I think there's another debate to be had. Who's a better player, which we were having on. I can't remember whether it were Preston or West Brom, and I was saying Illiman's a much better player now than Gibbs White was for us. And it was disputed, but I keep getting accused of throwing Andy the Blade under the bus. But he thinks Morgan Gibbs White is a better player than Illiman and Diane. I'll stand by it. That's what he said when he denies it later. I think we'll be out of the conversation, Dean, for that. I think he will be seen as an established Premier League player now. And I think he'll end up at like Crystal Palace or, obviously he's come from Wolves, but that sort of level of club, Fulham, maybe that sort of team where they can pay him a bit more money than us. Well, a lot more money than us, if I'm honest. He's on around 80 grand a week, I think, and we won't get anywhere near those figures. Jack will become a fitness gym coach if he retires. Yeah, I can see that, Scott. What was my 3 to go down from the Prem? I think what I want to happen and what I think will happen are two different things. I think Southampton are gone. I think we can all probably agree on that. I think Everton will go, and I think Forest will go. I want Leeds and Forest to go, but I've got a funny feeling, as ridiculous as this Sam Allardyce situation is, and it is ridiculous. It's even more ridiculous if you've seen his comments tonight, where he said that, you know, Pep's no better than me. Klopp's no better than me. Arteta's no better than me. Absolutely ludicrous. But I've got a feeling he'll nick some. Leeds will nick some, and they'll get it. Either they'll beat West Ham or they'll beat Tottenham, and they will be out of it, which is infuriating, really, if I'm honest, because they've been shocking, and it shouldn't be the way to sort of set the standard. But this is how desperate things are in terms of survival in the Premier League. Unreal, really. You'd sell McBurney, Andrew, because look at what he's done since he came. Very little to me. He doesn't deserve it. I know what you're saying. He's out of contract. So how much do you sell him for? You know, I'm not saying people wouldn't pay money for him. I think they probably would. But then that's more to the rebuild, isn't it? Say you get 3 million, 5 million, even 8 million for McBurney. What can you get in the Premier League that's going to... I'm not saying they won't be better than McBurney, but what sort of level of striker can you get that's going to impact us in the Premier League? So it's really tough, particularly with tight budgets. Oh, Rich thinks Leeds, Forest and Southampton will go. Brilliant. 100 grand a week in the bright lights of London. Gazette, you're right. That's what Gibbs White will be looking at. There's danger of us offering everyone we release a coaching role. I know we'll have them all, but they have to be able to actually coach. Billy is the only one with a track record currently. Yeah, I think Billy will leave. Well, I don't, you know. I would let Billy go in the summer because I think he's improved over the last few games and he's looked bright when he's come on. Obviously, he hasn't got the goal yet. But I do think he won't cut it at Premier League level. I think he struggled for the majority of Championship season, and I think we should let him go. But whether we do or not, I think Eki will keep him. Because I think he's him as a reliable option front bench every now and again. But more importantly, I think he's a leader in dressing room. And Billy don't think he's finished yet. Is it too sentimental to offer him a deal? I think so, potentially. But, you know, we all have his own opinions, though. Jack O'Connell to be a future manager. You heard it here first. Yeah, I won't doubt that, Pixie. And good evening, Van Blade. Good evening to you, pal. Leeds, Scabs and West Ham. Oh, can you imagine? It's not happening, but it'd be brilliant. Promotion money being filtered into the so-called United world. We need to disconnect from United world. It's no benefit. I think the United world thing, I'm certainly not defending it because I've never been a huge advocate of it. I understand why it was set up, but it's set up with it's got to be like a 10-year plan, hasn't it? Because otherwise, what's the point? We've seen no benefit. You're right. I think obviously Koulibaly had his loan to Beershot. That's probably the most use we've got out of it in terms of him having lots of minutes and getting it. The most benefit we would have seen would be if we'd have struck while AC Milan had bid like 13 million for him, cashed in then, and it benefits the whole group, if you like. But that were like the peak. Well, now Prince, after establishing United World, Prince wants out. And he's going to keep United World. Beershot will probably move up to be his number one club for the time being. So that'll be his focus. And absolutely more power to him, but it's not worked for us, has it? I agree. I don't know about promotion money being filtered into it. I'd be very surprised. But maybe Brewster will surprise everybody with a really strong Premier League season. Mr. Vancouver, I love your optimism, mate. Love your optimism. Can't see it. I think he could do it. This is another thing I was looking at as well, you see, because I'm doing my teams. And I think he could do with a season in Championship, Brewster. But we are so thin in the... If Billy goes, somebody's talking about McBurney going, and I understand that. But I think we'll keep him. We've obviously got Illiman, who's the main man, but I don't think he'll play right up top. I think he'll probably drop in and be more of a 10. And we'll have like a hard 9 and then a loose 10, which will be Illiman. And then you send Brewster out as well. You've got Jebo and Asula, who I'd like to see out on loan as well, probably. I don't know if you were calling for Jebo. Loads of big decisions, but particularly when you've got no money, you've got to keep some of them about, haven't you? Keep McBurney, as I say, you see, it's a split, isn't it? We need to keep a core squad. We can't replace all of them. Yeah, I agree, Van Blade, on it, key roles, really. That's why people like Robinson will get a contract. Now, you know what my feelings on Robinson, but like, it can't be choosers, I suppose. Billy should be scoring goals like Didsey. Go have some fun. Yeah, absolutely. Billy Sharp in League One, it'd be absolutely lethal, wouldn't it? Seems to be the plan, Van Blade. Keep everyone and add 5 or 6 players. How much would you sell Berger or Illiman for this summer? Are you trying to get me in bother, Rich? Because if they refuse to sign contract extensions, right? I've talked on this before about initially my first thought when I won't say found out that they weren't going to sign deals, but it's strongly intimated to me that they are going to see the deals out with us. And I thought, sell them. You've got to sell them because otherwise we're losing them for naught. And chances are, if we do get relegated, particularly with a low budget, then you have to cash in on them and get the most back in. So you sell Illiman, you sell Berger, you get another 30 million in now, which is probably what we'd on it. You know, you get a £60 million war chest, don't you, to rebuild your team. But I don't think we'd have got out of the Championship without Berger or certainly Illiman. So you take those 2 out of our squad, and what kind of a squad have you got? It's very patchy, very patchy. So I think for that reason alone, the fact that Ecky's saying he wants to keep most of the squad due to troubles we've had, the only fighting chance we've got of staying up is keeping Illiman and Sander. I think if we stay up, we've got half an inkling of a window of signing Sander. Illiman will definitely go next summer at the absolute latest. So, but if you're talking about hard and fast prices, Rich, I'd probably say we'll get about less than 20 for Illiman, only due to his contract situation. And I'd say around 12 for Berger, again, for the same reasons, because clubs know they can get him for no next following season. I'd give Marshall running the side. Danny, I would too, until end of season. I don't know about a running side. I wouldn't mind it at all, but I'd certainly like to see him get some minutes. Bernie's a lot more to his game other than goals. Sign him up. I agree with that point. He's clearly not a goal machine, and I think he showed in West Brom game when he missed the City. But he's not clinical, is he? Let's be right. He went through a bit of a purple patch earlier in the season, but he's very good with his feet. He's not great in the air when it comes to attacking the ball, but certainly defensive headers is very good. He does have a bit to offer. Jebo was brilliant the other day. I would loan Jebo and Asula, even maybe Marsh. I would too. That'd be my plan, Harry. It's the only way our budget will stretch, if we're honest. Keeping the chunk of the squad. Yeah, agreed. These comments are jumping about to just test me a little bit, I think. Jock might end up in women's footy coaching. He might do, yeah. Don't know what Alex would say about that, to be honest. Our academy provides far more benefit than United World. Absolutely. Jefferson could have a big season coming up. I'm really impressed with him against Preston, as was I. I won't tell you which family member because I'm not throwing him under the bus. But Jefferson has never impressed me when he comes on. Oh my God, bang, bang. 2 brilliant bits. It was Jebo's best sub-performance. And somebody, and I won't throw him under the bus by naming him, but I think you all know what I'm on about. Jefferson, he's never done it. Never done it for me. All his potential. Listen, I appreciate Scott and Van Blade having a conversation about it, and I will try and read them, but I'm sorry, I'm going to skip past. I'd like to see United buy Cameron Humphreys and Victor Johansson from Rotherham. Now, Johansson's been mentioned a lot. Really like Victor Johansson. I think he'd come cheap as well. And Cameron Humphreys, I haven't seen a lot of, but I look at other YouTube channels like Rotherham fan channels and stuff, and they rave about him. They think he's the next coming. So I'll have to do a little bit more work on Cameron Humphreys because he's coming up a little bit more every now and again. We need as many new signings as possible, Andrew says. Just can't see us stopping up without them. Young people. It's going to be a tough year, isn't it? Billy should carry on playing football for the Blades until his body tells him to stop playing altogether. See, Eamon, I don't agree with that, mate. I think sometimes you can play yourself into the ground, and what you don't want, the worst case scenario is him outstaying his welcome and sort of tarnishing his legacy, his legendary status. I don't think Billy would ever get to that stage, but you don't want to be remembering Billy as the guy that couldn't hit a barn door or anything like that. At the moment, his legacy's intact, and I think he leaves with if he leaves now, he leaves with his head held high, to be honest. Wrexham are going to sign Billy Sharp. Yeah, all right. I hope we can get to buy Doyle, get McAtee back on loan and buy him when we can. I don't think McAtee will come to us. I think we're going to be playing with more of a flat three next year, a little bit like we did when we first went up to Premier League with Wilder. I think we have to be more conservative and be aware that we're not going to have a lot of the ball in most games, which we're comfortable doing. That's okay. And I think Ndiaye will provide us with that outlet in the hole a little bit, rather than an attacking midfielder like McAtee. I think City will want him in a team with a more possession-based team. Teams like Brighton have been spoken about, and I think that's ideal for him. Brooks could be a surprise next season in our blaster, absolutely. What a week to be a blade, elite irreplaceable. He's telling them work rate under 21s look great. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. What's your subs goal before the season starts? PNUK, you have been a fantastic supporter of this channel, and I really appreciate all the advice. For any of you that don't know, go and check out pnuk.com. Paul does some great work in helping loads of channels grow. Thank you for that, mate. And in terms of my subs goal, well, I think Cammy helped slightly, but we've smashed the 1,300 barrier. Before next season, is it too ambitious to say 2K? Because I'd love to get to 2K. It sounds like a great number, doesn't it? But we're all going to have to work hard at spreading the word before then, aren't we? So, but thanks again. Really appreciate all your support. I think that's most comments. If I haven't got to your comment, I do apologise. But I have been rabbiting on for a long time now. So really appreciate it. You see what I mean? I'd have cut this out if it were recorded. Appreciate you all coming and joining me tonight while I just waffle on about the Blades like we all love to do. Hoping for a big 3 points. Let's get over that 90-point barrier tomorrow. Make Warnock a bit squeamish and then let me survive on final day. That'd be all right, wouldn't it? So come on, you red and white wizards. It's not going to be as smooth as I say this because I'm going to end and end again, but come on, you red and white wizards. Up the Blades. End, click, bye.